is Jonathan Frid. I play the role of Barnabas Collins on the continuing television drama, Dark Shadows. I'll be Ron Barry's guest this week, and I hope you can join us.
Remember, that's this week on The Ron Barry Show with me, Ron Barry, and Jonathan Frid. Wednesday nights here on Radio 14. Comes a time now on The Ron Barry Show that I've been looking forward to for many a moon. One day, last summer, I believe it was, I was a little ill. I was in bed with a cold. And I turned on a soap opera, what I thought was going to be a soap opera. Didn't turn out that way. The show was Dark Shadows, a show which I have not missed since that day. And my guest today is a gentleman who, well, I'm gonna try to analyze Dark Shadows a little bit. I think I've come up with a pretty good analysis of the show. But first, I want to welcome Mr. Jonathan Frid, Barnabas Collins, to the Ron Barry Show. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you, Ron, and I'm very delighted to be with you.
Now, first of all, before we get into Dark Shadows itself, I know you must have been in the business, in the acting business, for a long time before you became an overnight sensation. How about a little bit of your background?
Well, it's been a long time. Suddenly the years get ahead of you, and I look back almost a quarter of a century, and it's frightening. And I'm not that ancient, I don't think, but I have been around the business, I guess, since 1948. Well, that's 20 years. I haven't been consistently professional since then. In 1946, I served my apprenticeship in Pennsylvania at Milford one summer in a summer stock company there. And then I went down to Lake Hopatcong, New Jersey, and I finished the summer there, and then I went back and got my degree at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario.
Your degree in what?
BA. We have different terminology, or at least we did in those days. It was just called a general degree.
When you graduated from college, you got your liberal arts?
I call it liberal arts now.
Okay. And then you went into Shakespearean acting, am I right?
Well, not at that. No, I didn't get involved in Shakespeare actually until I came back to Canada from England. From McMaster, I toured Ontario in the winter of '48 after I'd graduated in a touring company of the Drunkard, and I played a bartender in that. And when we played Hamilton, great signs out in front of the theater, "Welcome home, Jonathan Frid," and all I did in it was just a bartender for about 2 minutes. And I call that exploitation, I guess. And then I went to England and I studied at the Royal Academy. I didn't complete my course there because I got a little anxious. You know how people, when they're young, they can't wait to start working. And I went into repertory down in Kent and another repertory company in Cornwall. And I went over there to get a classical training, and I found when I was over there that Canadians, because they were British subjects, were able to work without a permit. But Canadians to Englishmen sounded American. So a lot of the Canadians over there used to nab up American roles in musicals and any play that had an American in it. So I had a great problem about that because I really went over for this classical training, and I thought, well, the best way to make some quick money, I suppose, it would be to go after American parts. And I finally did one national tour of a West End success called The Third Visitor, in which I played an American gangster.
You, an American gangster? That's funny because I can, having only seen you as Barnabas, I can only picture you as Barnabas, and I'm going to get to that later on. Go ahead.
Well, I had a marvelous scene in this play. It was right at the beginning of the play, and I was dead after the first 10 minutes, but it was a good meaty scene. And
Did you talk like this?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Believe it or not. And after I had, been sort of de-Canadianized my voice at the Royal Academy. I had to get it all back again. But anyway, I was determined to get a notice on that tour. And it was very difficult because no matter how good you could be, it was at the beginning of the play and you're long forgotten. And we finally reached Cambridge in England. And I finally got a notice. Brief, but it was a notice. And I felt very good about that. Then I came home to Canada for Christmas, and I don't really know why I didn't go back to England, because I intended to. But one thing led to another. I got offered a job back in Canada playing Dr. Sloper in The Heiress, which is one of my favorite roles, and I stayed on for that, and that led to other things, and before I knew it, I never did get back to England, and I haven't been back since. But one of the things that's puzzled me through the years is really, why was it that I really didn't go back? And, I think my grandfather was an immigrant from England, from Kent, as a matter of fact. And he emigrated to Canada. And I think that I finally realized that I was still part of that society that went west, went to the New World, and as a result of which, when I was in England, even though it was, I'd been brought up on English culture, English history, I still felt that it was a foreign country in an old continent. And it was, when I was in France on a visit, I would come back to England feeling I was back home because of the language, I suppose, as much as anything. But I never, ever really felt that I was a complete native of England, whereas in the United States, of course, my hometown, Hamilton, is only 50 miles from the border. And I feel that we're so much like Americans that I never even think about it. And I feel completely at home down here. I always have. But England was something else again. Even though it was our mother country, it was foreign in a strange kind of way. And it was. And now, at this stage of my career, I want to go even further west. I have this great thing about California. And
I know you want to be a professor, don't you?
Yes, I would like to teach before I'm through, and it's not just and I've avoided it so far because I didn't want to feel that I was doing it because I didn't make a success of acting, because I think that too many people think of teaching that way, and it's very unfair. It's a profession that isn't honored nearly enough.
Very true. We will be back with Jonathan Frid in just a moment. From the Ron Barry Show is Barnabas, Jonathan Frid. Jonathan, how did Barnabas come about? How did you get the part?
Well, it was a very usual situation. As a matter of fact, I had just arrived home from a national tour of Hostile Witness with Ray Milland, and the call was very strange because the call I got from my agent, because I had just gotten in the apartment. And I hadn't even dropped my bags when the phone rang, and he said, they're looking for a vampire for a soap opera called Dark Shadows. And I thought, well, that's one for the books. We'll go and read for it and see what happens. And so, just like I always do, I went, I didn't actually have an audition, it was merely an interview. And every time I go for a role, I always see very clearly how I look to producers, because all the types like me in New York are there. And I saw all these sinister-looking people also there to read for it, and I looked at that person, I'm not going to get it because he looks this way, he looks marvelous. And so I was interviewed, and I went home and never thought another thing about it. I did my chore, I went and read, or at least I went and was interviewed. And, excuse me. And the following day was very quick. My agent called and said they're terribly interested in you, and I'm sure they're going to use you. And so I went again, and that was it. And then a strike came along, and after a strike of actors and announcers and so forth. And so all work ceased for about 3 weeks. So that kind of gave me attention, because I had to wait 3 weeks before I actually got started. But it was very simple, and of course I thought, meanwhile I had planned to go west. I tried twice to go west to get a teaching job, and or both, do that and also maybe do some work in Hollywood. TV or films. And but twice I got stopped by these jobs, and I thought, well, this will go on for about 3 or 4 weeks, which they told me it would. And I thought, well, I'll go out a month later. And then, of course, the phenomenon began. The role caught on. The mail started to come in, and meanwhile, I wasn't at all satisfied with what I was doing on the show. I was very nervous at first, but somehow that played into the role, because Barnabas, remember, came out of his coffin under very strange circumstances, and he was new to the 20th century world. He had to play very carefully with everyone. He knew he was playing the big lie. He announced himself as a cousin from England, and to say nothing of the fact that he wasn't used to telephones and all the conveniences of the 20th century. And suddenly he's confronted with all of this, so that he's a very nervous person. And that my nervousness with television, although I had done a little television before, but not very much, but the pressures that were demanded in this particular situation made me very insecure at first, and but some strange kind of way it all helped. I remember one particular episode when I was being introduced to Vicky Winters and Carolyn, who were 2 characters in the play, and there were about 4 of us in the group, and the lines were very quick, one on top of the other, and I goofed a couple of them, but you know, it was an introduction situation, and at the time I was thinking to myself while we were doing this, oh heavens, this is awful, this is dreadful, I'll be fired tomorrow, and so on. And when I saw that on the air 2 weeks later, it was absolutely marvelous. I could never have acted that by any plan in a million years. The look on my face was so marvelous, because it was sort of a kind of insecure. I was covering my own insecurity as the character, as Barnabas, you see. And there was this smile on my face, but it was behind it was this hideous kind of insecurity. And it was, I don't think I've ever performed as well as I did that day. And what was going on in my mind was, oh, I've goofed. You know? Right, and you're going to be fired tomorrow. Now, Jonathan, I have read interviews with you, and you kind of, I've made some notes here of my own. I've analyzed Dark Shadows, and I think there are 2 reasons for its success. Now, maybe this will help you out, because you really don't know, as far as what I've read, you don't really know why people dig Dark Shadows so much. Well, you know, I've tried to analyze it. I think I have some ideas. I just, you know, I hate to sound, or seem to sound, a little conceited about it. I'm not really conceited at all. I tell you what's kept my feet in the ground through all of this is the fact that I have to come up here at 8 o'clock every morning and do another show. If I were a Broadway hit, and I had nothing else to do but perform the same thing every day, I would have time to luxuriate in all of this publicity. But I still have to do a new show every day, and it's hard work. I mean, you know, I'm no one different from anybody else. As a matter of fact, I still have my peculiar insecurities. Not so much, but heaven help me if I ever lose that in a way, because it keeps you up to scratch. Jonathan, let me take a break for a commercial, and then see if you agree with my analysis of Dark Shadows. This is the Ron Barry Show. My guest is Jonathan Frid, who plays Barnabas Collins on ABC TV's Dark Shadows. Now, I have found that there are 2 reasons that I have found, as I say, for the success of Dark Shadows. Number 1, nobody on Dark Shadows is having an illegitimate baby. There's nobody on trial for murder. It's not the ordinary run-of-the-mill soap, if we can use that term. I think the Supernatural's always been big box office anyway. From the time films began, they were making silent horror movies, well before Karloff turned 45 and played Frankenstein, played the monster for the first time. And I think the main appeal is Barnabas. And I'll tell you why I think the main appeal of Dark Shadows is Barnabas. All of the monsters in history, Frankenstein's monster had a criminal brain. The Wolfman is, I think, the most comparable to Barnabas, because he didn't want to do what he was doing, but he couldn't help it. And I think that the main reason, and I can only compare Barnabas to Dracula, is that Dracula, the vampire,
was totally and completely evil. He couldn't care less who he killed, why, or how. Barnabas, on the other hand, is the first sympathetic vampire in the history of horror films. As far as I have never seen a sympathetic vampire. And I think that's the main appeal. That's my opinion.
Well, you see, I saw the Dracula, the original Dracula film, about a month or so ago, about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And
that's when they're usually on about these times. Yeah.
And it was a pretty straightforward thing, but it gets. I think Bela Lugosi did exactly what he wanted to do, but it's pretty. It gets monotonous, you know. Whenever I've played villains a lot, and to give them variety. That's one reason why I like to make it somewhat sympathetic. Sometimes I think we make them too sympathetic, to tell you honest truth. But I think that it's good to have variety. Now, another thing, there are villains like I've done a lot of Shakespeare. Now, I played Macbeth and I played Richard III, and only recently have I realized how those two characters have influenced Barnabas. I wasn't aware of it at first, but you have Macbeth, who's a murderer. And incidentally, you were wrong about the show not having trials for murder, because there is a trial going on right now, and for witchcraft.
Oh yeah, but that's witchcraft. Well, yeah. That's not murder, you know.
But anyway, I've certainly done a considerable amount of murdering in this thing.
But you were never going to be on trial for it.
Well, no, if I can manage to keep getting away with it. But here was Macbeth, who was a killer. But he's rather sympathetic when you stop to think about it. Because he is guilty. He is guilt-ridden from the very beginning, and that is a sympathy getter, if there ever was one. And now, you take Richard III. He has a ball, doing his killing, and until the very end of the play, he is suddenly confronted with all the ghosts of all the people he's killed, and it's like a geyser, the way that his guilt suddenly gushes out from the deepest corners of his soul. And but up until then, he is a charmer, and he rather enjoys his job of acting out these little scenes all the way through the play. And as I say, his guilt, it does not come out until the end. But so, Barnabas is somewhat of a charmer too, in a way. Certainly, when in the story, in the present, he has to charm his newfound relatives, and so he has that quality of Richard III. But really, he's more like Macbeth because, I think this is the role that's really influenced Barnabas as much as anything, because he is guilt-ridden, and I think people, if they feel that he is guilty, that is a great step forward, and possibly he is being cured. Which everybody hopes that he could be cured. Those are the two roles that really have influenced me.
That's very, very interesting. I was thinking about Dark Shadows, and something came up that I never thought about before. This is just a thought. I don't think there's any significance to it, but most of the characters in the Collins family have first names with 3 syllables. There's Barnabas, Angelique, Naomi, Joshua, Millicent. Ever crossed your mind?
Never thought of it. Now, what do you make of all of that?
I don't know. I'm not interviewing the writer. I'm interviewing the star, so I don't know. Anyway,
I must say that I think names in those days were a little flossier than they are now.
Well, I don't know anybody named Barnabas. There might be a Millicent out there or a Joshua, but not a Barnabas. I don't know.
Nowadays we have John, George, Bill.
That's it. Ben, Stokes. Jonathan, I know that the show is done under great pressure. How many shows do you do a day? How many shows do you tape?
One only, and I hope to heaven we'll never do more than one. Although at one time we did try to get a couple of extra shows done in 1 week, and so we did 1.5, and that was really too much. To do one a day when you stop to think of it is an incredible feat. A half-hour show, yesterday I read for a show. Oh no, the show I did yesterday was read the day before, the evening before. So we start the reading at 4 o'clock. in the afternoon, and that show has to be rehearsed, conceived, and taped by the following day at 3:30. With all of the technical effects, just with the lines we have to learn, and the positions, and what we're going to do with the role that day, how we're going to treat the story. It's an incredible feat to do this. I mean, you get your television specials, which last, say, an hour and a half, which is like 3 of our shows. They take 3 weeks, so it's like a week per act, whereas we do this one of these things in one day. So that it's really an incredible feat, and the pressure is plenty, as it is.
We'll be back to close things out with Jonathan Frid in just a little while. Well, I must say that this has been quite a unique experience, talking to a man playing a vampire on television. The first time a vampire has been played on television rather than in a movie on television. I'm talking to Jonathan Frid, and we've got a few more questions. Now, Jonathan, you're a Shakespearean actor. You've had a great deal of experience acting. And all of a sudden, Barnabas Collins has catapulted you to the heights of daytime television, and there's a big audience of daytime television. Are you worried now about being typecast?
No, because Barnabas Collins, if you stop to think about it, it has more characteristics. He's more variable almost than any other character I've ever played. If you realize, since I've been on this thing, I was playing the big lies I mentioned earlier for many months there. I was playing what my own age, say around 45 or around in there, which is we call a heavy. Then a doctor tried to cure me, if you recall. And in the process, the experiment went a little off, and I became, instead of becoming human, I became my real age, which was 175. and we attempted to create this character of 175. The makeup was marvelous. We got a specialist in to do that, by the name of Dick Smith, one of the world's greatest makeup men. And I would like to have had more time to organize that particular aspect of my character in the playing of it. But nevertheless, I had a chance then to play a man of 175. Then when we went back into the past, I played my pre-vampire days when I was what you call a juvenile, a hero, I mean, a good guy. So I was playing a romantic juvenile lead. And then, then I became a villain in the past. At least I became a vampire, which, take it for what you will, as a villain or what. So I've had many situations and many emotions and many moods and many drives and many compulsions to play. I mean, I played everything in this role. In this one role, I played a dozen roles. I mean, it's been a marvelous thing. So I don't know what they could type here, because if I were to type this kind of role for the rest of my life, I would be perfectly happy. I don't call it being typed in this role, because he has so many facets to it.
It's very true. I never thought about that. All I thought it was Barnabas Collins the vampire. Yeah, it's very good. I'll just ask you one more thing, and I think I've saved the best question for last, because there must be times when you just absolutely go hysterical at some of the scripts. They're played so seriously that there must be times when you have to get the laughter out of you somehow. Does the cast break up often at some of the lines?
Oh yes, particularly at our readings. The show we do, and if we don't like a particular line, instead of stopping the reading, because they're timing it, even the first reading, they're timing it, for the half-hour period, we will comment on the line by camping it up or giggling, but still saying the line, and so the director knows that we're not too happy with that line, or it sounds pretty silly. But it is we do break up, but in the end. We have to play it, and it's not difficult. You just pull yourself together and play the situation. If you think about it, when you break down the play and break it down into moments, that's what an actor does. He plays a moment, and every moment, it's the juxtaposition of moments that sometimes seem a little ridiculous. But each moment taken, each few seconds, can be a genuine thing, and are always genuine, so that you play moments and you stop thinking about, what it's all leading to.
You have trouble with the fangs at times, don't you?
Oh, yes, and there are also many giggles over technical problems, like getting the fangs in, and they always have to give me, they have to take a close-up of the other person at the end of our dialogue, just before I'm going to put the bite on. I have to get off camera and shove them in like a denture. And one time I skipped a cue, and there was a long shot of two of us. Instead of waiting for the camera to go to the other person, I went over and got my teeth, and I was right on camera doing it. But they had to splice that and do it again. But it has the fangs have created a lot of laughs around the studio.
My guest has been a man who is playing a vampire on television, and I will attest to the popularity of Dark Shadows by saying one more thing to Jonathan Frid. This is the only soap opera. I call it a soap opera because it's not really, but it's a continuing drama.
A daytime drama, I believe our producer likes to have it.
Right. I will conclude by saying that this is the only continuing daytime drama where everybody in the audience knows who's playing who. It isn't Jesse and Tom. It isn't just Barnabas and Millicent. People know the name Jonathan Frid, and it's a credit to you and a credit to the show, and I thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us.
And thank you, Ron, very much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.